Welcome to the Empowered to Connect podcast, where we come together to discuss a healing-centered approach to engagement and well-being for ourselves, our families, and our communities. I'm JD Wilson, and I am your host. And today on the show, we bring Mo and Tona Ottinger on to talk about attachment styles and patterns. This week, we'll be going from a different direction. Last week, obviously, Dr. DeLuna came on and talked with us about a very scientific approach, an academic understanding of what are attachment styles, what are attachment cycles, how do they form, how do they happen in kids. And this week we want to talk about why is it important for parents to understand attachment styles and attachment patterns. Why is it important for us to know our own? And then what are the implications of that? And so from a parenting perspective, we talked today about everything from why it's important to how that information could and should impact our, not just parenting, but just our relational engagement, period. Any relationships that we have should be informed and affected by our attachment patterns. So we'll talk about that and give some clarity there. Great conversation with Mo and Tona there with a lot of really personal stories. I just think it is a very necessary, very good conversation to start when it comes to parenting. So without any further ado, here are myself, Mo, and Tona Ottinger. So we're here today with Mo and Tona Ottinger from ETC. And if my voice sounds a little bit raspier than it normally does, it's because it is March Madness. I've been screaming at the television watching basketball for a couple of days, but this is a safe place. We can talk about that here. And so we wanted to talk more about attachment, but not from a professional standpoint as much as from a parenting standpoint. We wanted to share some of our individual perspectives that we've kind of gained and been handed by life over the years. And especially in light of how some of you have been interacting with social media and some of the feedback we got from our episode re-airing last week with Dr. Jamie DeLuna from TCU. We felt like this would be a helpful conversation to have about we see them attachment styles, attachment patterns based on who you talk to or hear. We hear a lot of professionals using the pattern language these days. So Mo and Tona, why don't we kind of start with that, even that conversation of attachment styles and patterns. We mentioned a minute ago we weren't recording already when you said this earlier. So do you mind kind of sharing that insight before we start into the rest of the conversation?
Sure. I wonder, Mo, if you would echo this too. I think as we have just been parenting over we're about to hit 22 years for our oldest. Thinking about our own attachment patterns and styles and ways of relating has been, I think, one of the most profound things that we've done as parents and in relationship with each other, relationships with other people, thinking about our own family dynamic. So, I'm happy that we're talking about it today from just us perspective, like our own shared experience. And JD, kind of to your point, one of the things that has been helpful as we've been unpacking this idea of what is our attachment style? It's being aware of the fact that we relate with different people in different ways. Research does tell us that you have a primary attachment style in childhood that you get from typically your maternal caregiver is passed down. Obviously, if there's been transitions, changing of primary caregivers, there can be some attachment trauma in your past as a young child, but there still isn't a way of relating that has been given to you by your people that cared for you in your environment. But then it sort of shows itself in all different kinds of ways. So it's complex, it's nuanced, and I think just at the top of the episode, it's important for us to say that. We're sharing from our own experience, but by no means are we trying to explain or conceptualize all of attachment theory. We couldn't do that in 20 minutes anyway. And I think it might take away from a little bit of the importance of this conversation if we did. So, just give us some grace as we're talking about it from a personal perspective. And I do think last week's episode is fantastic. And then if you're catching this episode as it's being published, we're doing a lot on social media right now about attachment, childhood attachment styles and patterns, adult attachment styles and patterns, how those two things sort of work together. And so you can always search us on social media. If you're listening to this after the fact, This is March of 2022. You can go find us on social media. But anyway, it's a nuanced conversation, but one I'm excited to have. And I feel like, I'm curious to hear from Mo. Both of us have just had a long journey, a lot of conversations, typically about trying to figure out what in the world is going on with us and why we react in the way we're reacting. Why are we feeling the way we're feeling?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you said we're 22 years into this parenting journey. And when we start our parenting journey through adoption, we were given a half a sheet of paper 22, 23 years ago on attachment, and we had to sign it that we read it. And I mean,
do you remember what we talked about, Mo? Do you remember her reaction to that half sheet of paper?
No, I'll be honest. I probably didn't even read it.
You probably didn't. Here's the deal.
Let's be honest.
I probably did, but here's what I probably thought. I mean, this is the truth of it. I probably read it and thought, oh, those, poor kids who have struggles with attachment, we're going to be great parents and this won't be us. I'm certain that's what I thought back then. And it was because I was putting obviously far too much confidence in our ability to parent, which we very quickly uncovered, was not necessarily correctly placed confidence. But it was it was like 2 paragraphs.
Yeah. Well,
that was all the training we got.
Right. If you read it, right. But I was going to say, I think so often though, it goes to how people think about attachment, and it's often the child needs to attach to me instead of attachment. I mean, a shift for me was thinking about attachment's a two-way street, that it's both of us. We bring both child and caregiver, parent, bring something to the equation. And so I think 20 plus years ago, I entered into parenting thinking that it was all about child or children connecting to me, not realizing that I played a significant part in that relationship, and soon found out, and then continuing to find out, that there's a role I play.
That's so true. I remember that first time we saw a graphic from Empowered to Connect that was the attachment dance. And it talked about how our kiddos who, in this specific situation, came into families through adoption or foster care, how they came with their own attachment patterns and styles and history. And again, like you were saying, it was that epiphany of like, oh my goodness, so do we.
Yeah.
And the naivety that we were just by being ourselves, it was all that was needed. And that, in fact, if we weren't awake to ourselves and understanding ourselves and paying attention to our own attachment patterns, we may or may not be providing an optimal environment for a child to experience any sort of healing or even the ability to safely attach to us, which is what we begin to uncover, is in fact our reactions and our own attachment style was not laying a foundation for a child to come into our family and come into a relationship with either one of us and freely rest in that relationship. Would you state at that explicitly, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I remember just the feeling one night of going, I am really good relationally with people, except for the people that are under my roof. Yeah. Like, I said, I don't understand how I can work a room and I can connect with people and I can understand people and I was on staff at a church and I was doing all these things relationally and, quote, succeeding at it. But the little ones in my home, and Tona, if we're honest, right? Like we think, if we talk about our marriage, that I was not succeeding in the most important relationships in my life, because
we were just stumbling
big time,
and harming relationally harming one another by not being safe and not even understanding what was really going on. Right. And then we started having some epiphanies. Like, so yours was maybe seeing sort of that graphic about two people in a relationship. Like, do you feel like that's when things started to shift for you?
Yeah, I think, it goes back so much. If I'm just transparent, so much of me is the emotional side of me has always been the struggle, being attuned to what's going on inside of me and understanding how I'm feeling and really being void of that. And when we talk about attachment styles or patterns, mine was definitely, I was parenting from a very dismissive way. And was clueless to that. Like, thought I was so present with my kids, and that I was making decisions to physically be present with my kids, but just realized because of how unattuned I was to myself and how dismissive, how I was not a safe person for my own children. And that was kind of a wake-up call. And the wake-up call wasn't something I read or a graph. It was, you going out of town for the weekend, and I was left with the kids. And I still remember this instance, tucking a kid in bed, and I honestly thought, this is how off I was. I honestly thought we were having a sweet moment.
Yep. Yeah.
Not only was it not a sweet moment in this child's eyes, this child got out of bed, ran down the hallway. When I found, child few seconds later, curled up in the fetal position saying, "Dad, I have big emotions and you don't know what to do with them." And I just remember being so perplexed by that, because honestly, I thought we were having a sweet moment at bedtime, and it was just the complete opposite. And there were several moments over that weekend with every child that I was just being thrown of going, I don't know how to react in this situation. I don't know how to handle this situation. And just the realization for me of, I want to be a emotionally safe person for my children and for Tona. I remember, I think Tona at the time, we'd been married like 15 years, and you came back from that weekend. I was like, you are not going to believe what happened. And I thought you were going to tell me, oh my goodness, these kids, they're crazy. But you looked at me and thought, hey, Mark, you don't know your feelings. You don't know your heart. Like, that's why I have heart friends, because there are places you cannot go emotionally. And I just remember going, no. We're husband and wife. Like, we're one. I am supposed to be your emotional rock. And she was like, nah, you ain't it. And so, I think there was just this just the work emotionally. And I'm still, that was 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 12 years ago. And I am that is still, I have to work so hard to be emotionally present. It has not come naturally for me. I have to be fully attuned. I have to take deep breaths. I have to focus on it. It is swimming upstream for me. And if I don't intentionally try to go there, I will naturally gravitate toward just being a dismissive dad. And, it takes work, but the gift in that, I remember tucking another kid in bed, and we had found out that day that he had been bullied by a kid. And I remember coming home from work and Tona telling me about this situation that happened. And man, to find out that your kid got bullied, I was ticked. Yeah. And everything just reared up. And so that night, tuck him in bed, I just told him, I said, "Hey, bud, I heard about today. And I just want you to know that, I'm sorry that happened, and I'm really mad. Like, I wish I was there. I might have clocked him." And we kind of did the bedtime routine and got him tucked in bed, and I left. And, when I was in the den, I was reading or watching a show, and about 45 minutes, he walked in there and he said, "Hey, Dad, were you really mad?" And I was like, "I was, buddy." And he kind of got a little smirk on his face. And he said, "Okay." And he went back to bed. And like the old me, when I tucked him in bed, would have said, "Hey, buddy, I'm sorry that happened. You're going to be all right. Shake it off.
Right.
Tomorrow's a new day. You're all right." And if I would have done that, I would have tucked him in bed, walked out of his room, and I would have left him alone.
Yep.
Not just physically, but emotionally alone. And when he came in and wanted to verify that made you mad, what I said to him is, "I see you and I'm with you. I'm with you." And so that's the felt safety piece. That's the work that we have to do from an attachment side of things.
Well, just like you guys, like I remember being so confident about parenting. I really thought, well, I don't even have to think about that. Like we're everybody's favorite babysitters. We're really fun. We both, like, Elizabeth is great. I'm fun. I'm great. I'm a great time. Like, our kids are going to have a great time. This is going to be no problem at all. And I can remember being in the ETC in class and us going through attachment, and I was so confused that I had missed something in the content, because I remember thinking, like, this is saying, like, part of it is what I bring, but, like, I was with you, Mo. I thought attachment was like, make sure we're not bringing too many outside people around. We want the child to attach to me, like thinking like a koala. Like, I just got to be the tree, and the kid will attach and latch on, and we're good. Like, it brought on this wave of panic of, like, well, I know what my past is like, and I know how weird I am and how many things that I've been through personally. And I don't want any of that coming into this relationship. I don't want any of that to affect this. And so that, if you're a research scientist, if Jamie listens to this day, she's like, "Oh, I know exactly what that means," And it wasn't until I went through the adult attachment interview, maybe about a year ago, that I had some light shed on that. And it wasn't just, hey, there's some history and, oh man, this attachment thing, it's tough for you. It was a very clear style or pattern of interaction that I could then look into, read about, understand, and I started seeing it everywhere. Now, I wish I could be at the place to say, like, "Oh, now everything is just rosy, and man, these kids are just like koalas. Like, I can't get them off me. All they want to do is come and talk to me all the time and share their emotions." I mean, it is like you said, swimming uphill is the best, or upstream is the best description. Like, it feels like there is a current pulling me out of truly engaging in every conversation. And that's okay. Like, it's okay that it's a lot of hard work, and it's okay that sometimes I fail at that and have to go back and repair, because the beautiful, beautiful thing that does is that repair then backdoor builds connection and helps the next interaction that's going to happen. And so, in terms of particulars, like, I don't have greatest hits stories yet of failures or successes that I want to share, on the show. But I think the work that has become clear, and we talk about this all the time, but parenting seems to be, the longer that I'm in it, so much more about me doing my own work and knowing my own self and seeing my own shortfalls and blind spots and making provision for those and working through those and processing those before I ever get to actually parenting the way that I thought I would parent, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, JD, I mean, I know your kids are just a little bit younger of ours, but I mean, we've got, we go 22 and we've got 4 that are all in that late teens, early 20s. And then we've got, some young ones, but like, I just think where I was 20 plus years ago and just now seeing my children grow up and what I thought about the work that I was going to have to do. Yeah. I mean, when we think about attachment, like you said it, I thought, let's just, that's going to be a couple of months. That's going to be 3 or 4 months. Let's get them into our home. Let's kind of cocoon a little bit, don't stay too busy, and it'll be attached and on. Yeah. And
there's a start and end to that process.
But that's, I mean, the beauty of relationships, meaningful, deep relationships, and just the work with our children is that it's ongoing and it's continuous. And there are seasons that I do it really well, and there are seasons that I flub, and I am human. And but there's this beauty. I mean, man, if I could just tell parents, like there's this place that it's never too late. Like you feel like, man, I have just messed up with the kid, and I just want to say it's not. That you do your work, your kid's gonna pick up on it. And right. and that's part of my story is I've got a kiddo that we struggled and it took years, but there has been a shift, and there's a felt safety between us now, and emotionally we can go some places that we couldn't go when they were younger. And so that relationship is seeing some healing, and there are days that I still mess up. Right. That I still am not where I need to be. So I just say that I just think sometimes when you start off in parent and you've got little ones, like you feel like, oh, this is just going to be these younger years and we'll work through some things. And then we're just on this path. And I'm like, man, it is ongoing. Yeah. Because, just when you think, man, I've got this figured out, all of a sudden they're teenagers or they're tweens and things change. But there really is this beauty and this sweetness of just doing the work of doing. I don't know how to stress that enough. There is such a beauty in doing the hard work because it will pay off. It will pay off.
Yeah, I think I hear you talking, and it makes me think about just there's always hope, and even for ourselves, if there's anything that we want to say, that we want to make sure is clear, is that attachment's fluid. It's not stagnant, and our attachment style is fluid. And so no matter like your childhood experiences, no matter what circumstances you were in, and if we think about the adult attachment styles, they're secure, which means you were sort of given secure attachment by your primary caregiver when you were young. And then there's dismissive, entangled, and then there's like even in those, and disorganized, but even in those, the ones that are not secure from childhood can move towards earned security. And that's the piece, Mark, that you're even saying, is that maybe, and for me too, I lean more towards the entangled or the enmeshed, which is a little bit different than when like what you were saying, which was dismissive, which is like emotionally void. So the enmeshed or entangled we get a little bit more emotionally flooded. A word that might feel familiar would be a little codependent, although it doesn't exactly parallel that way, but so they react differently to children, that you're parenting in a different kind of way. But there's always hope to move towards what's called earned security, which is the story of what you're sharing. So, in parenting, it's never too late for us to start making sense of our own past, to start being aware of our own attachment behaviors and patterns, start going, oh, look at me, here I go again, sort of in this like non-judgmental, self-aware kind of a way of like, look at what I just did there again. As you're paying, I mean, it was what you said, JD. You said you started learning about it and then you realized it was everywhere with everyone.
Yes.
Because it or not, we can't get away from ourselves. Like it or not, we are with ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
And we have these reactions and these feelings and these ways of self-protection and these ways of self-preservation that, they served us in childhood well. And so what does it look like for us to just be mindful of them and kind of go, oh, look, there it is. And then attempt to adjust and or reconcile if some of your reaction caused harm, but just like start paying attention and then rebuilding those relationships, which, I mean, I don't want us to get off the podcast and for everybody to think that Mo was the only one in our family that had work to do, because that's far from the truth. I had my own kind of work to do. And what is interesting, and I don't know if, there's couples that might listen to this together and go, aha, because some of the children that Mo struggled with the most were the ones that I actually felt the strongest attachment to.
Yeah.
And a couple of kids that I struggled with the most are the ones that Mo felt the most connected to. And that has been an interesting dynamic that's played out as we've started trying to figure our own attachment styles out and understanding how those are playing out with our kids' attachment styles and personalities. And again, just being mindful of it and taking some responsibility for those relationships, which that's the key when you think about two people being in the relationship, is taking responsibility for the part that you play as the parent, in how we react or what kind of safety we create or what's the environment that's set or what's the tone of the relationship, and sort of doing our own work to move towards our own security.
Yeah. And I think just kind of, even to just kind of wrap us up or start moving that direction, we talk about this in a parenting context, but Mo, you said it. This is human interaction, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
it also should serve as just a little guidepost for us in regular conversation with our other close relationships, be it friends, family members, spouse, parent, whatever. In those other relationships, it's no different. You're both still bringing your stuff to the table, right? And so that awareness can help not only in your parenting world, but in friendships and in relationships as well. And so it is something to consider, something to think about, something to not be able to wrap up within 25 minutes of a podcast, but hopefully it can be a conversation starter for you. And so, guys, any last thoughts before we close out today?
Mine might be just to be curious, like just to take that posture of, if something's not going right or going great with you and a kiddo, there's probably 1 million contributing factors. It is not as easy as saying, oh, that's an attachment thing. It's not that simple. It's pretty complex. It's pretty nuanced. But to step back and say, I wonder how my past, my history, my ways of reaction, my physiological wiring for self-protection, my neuro pathways of connection and relating, how are all those things at play here? And then just be curious about that for yourself with the desire, not just simply for self-understanding, but with the desire for to grow and to be a safer place for your children and your spouse or your safe friends and family, to be a safer relational place. And frankly, I think you'll probably find yourself being a little nicer to yourself. I think whenever you start understanding why you do what you do, there's this natural level of self-compassion that bubbles up. So actually the whole thing gets better because you don't feel like such a failure and you don't beat yourself up so much. And all of that self-shame and condemnation, I think, gets a little quieter when you begin to understand why you're doing what you're doing, because you can just be like, oh, I understand why as a human being, I do that thing. And now I can go, oh, okay, Tona, let's take a deep breath. Let's meet some needs. Let's practice some self-compassion. Let's go apologize or make amends and forgive and move on. But if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing and you're just stuck in a cycle of reacting or, disrupting relationships or getting stuck or not the person you wish you were, not the parent you wish you were, that can be really defeating. And I know that because we were there. And we can get back there in a second. I don't mean it to ever sound like we've arrived, but we were in a deep, dark place for a good number of years.
Yep.
So curiosity and self-compassion, I think, and just apologize, like just stinking apologize a lot, all the time, without going into a shame spiral over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mo, what's on
that's great. No,
I can tell you've got a lot of deep thoughts. What you thinking?
Well, no, I think it's been said, this is just the essence of being human. And I think that's what we're trying to invite you into, is just being human and accepting the downsides and the upsides. And I mean, you just said, Tona, reaction. Like, I think that's what it was. Life was reactionary. Every aspect of it. It was waking up every morning and was on the defense and just reacting to everything around me. And when you're just reacting, you're not going anywhere. You're not, and so I think to just begin to understand yourself. I mean, I don't want to say this was easy. It's scary, and it's still scary at times. And I don't want to sit here and say I never react. I mean, but
of course we do. Of course
we do all those things. But why do I react, and why did I react that way? And just I love you just saying being curious, because I wasn't curious, and there are days I'm still not curious. But in those moments where I am, there's just a sweetness to it. And I just think if you're a parent and you're listening to this and there are days that you are just struggling, that's being a parent. And can you just be curious and what's there? So.
Mo, when you said it can be, and it is scary, like what comes up in that moment? Can you expound on that a little bit more? Like what is that in you?
Well, I think just being honest about your emotions can be really scary. For me, being dismissive of emotions meant that I wanted life to be fun. I wanted life to be easy. So for me to say, I am really mad because my calmness and my fun has been interrupted, and then I feel guilty that I'm frustrated with myself, or I'm frustrated with the child. I'm hurt. For me to begin to express some of these things, like, whoa. I needed it to be sunny and calm. Every day needed to be a beach day for me, and it wasn't. And so to be honest about emotions, for me to say, Tona hurt me is vulnerable.
And that's so scary.
That's scary. I didn't want you to hurt me. I didn't want to give you that power to hurt me, right? And I didn't want to give that 7-year-old, that 7-year-old's not going to run this house. I'm going to run that, So to be honest about things for me was super scary. And is super scary.
Right. So it's interesting. And I've got some thinking to do after we got the podcast. I've got some more noodling, because what's coming up in me is the opposite of that is what's scary. So this is interesting, because to you, what was maybe scary was stepping towards the emotion and going towards the feelings.
Yeah.
As someone who might go there and like get really enmeshed with the kids, setting a boundary and stepping back from them with some level of autonomy is what feels scary to me. So releasing them and not feeling responsible for their emotions, not feeling responsible or carrying their reactions, like having a boundary. You've seen me grow in that way, right, Mo?
I have. And can I be honest right here? There's moments within our marriage, I'm like, come on, Tona, you need to be more with me.
I know. And I'm like, actually, what's healthy for me is like, I don't need to hear about all this. I know. Because I was like sucked in for so many years. So it's almost like our growth patterns are pulling away from each other. Like for you to sort of move towards security is to go towards the emotion.
Right.
And for me to move towards security is to get a little, I mean, it is not that I am void of caring, but just a little bit of like, what is mine to control? What's mine to do? What's mine to fix? What's mine to engage in? Where's my boundary? Our growth patterns have been a little different, right?
That's right.
So the scary thing for me is setting a little healthy distance. The scary thing to you is pulling close. What in the world? I've had a major like marriage epiphany.
Well, I mean,
this here episode.
I'll jump in to just say yes to that. Like, I think that seeing that and it clicks with me the way it did with you, Tona, to just go, oh yeah, well, we have different personalities. So that lean in is going to be different based on who we are. Like the challenge of going to the hard places, all of us do have some natural sweet spots and easy places to go that are helpful and that are great and that they don't require the big lift and they are downhill or down.
Right, Judy, it's just who we are.
Yeah. And then we also have these just parts of us because we're human that are just, I don't know, just not optimal, right? Like if we can't be perfect people, so there's going to be strengths and weaknesses to us. And so I think what I'm hearing both of y'all say and what resonates with me is that we are at our best, at our healthiest when we're pushing ourselves to lean into those unhealthy sides of ourselves or our weaker sides of ourselves and grow there and do the scary first step of, let me do this because I know that I'm not as good naturally at this and I want to step in here. And so I think that's really good and something important for us to understand. So thank y'all.
Well, thanks for taking us therapy today, JD.
Goodness gracious.
We've had family counseling here on this podcast episode.
Great. I'll just go use the invoice. I'll send you an invoice and email.
Yeah.
Well,
always in process, always on a journey. And it's never, ever, ever too late to start making sense of the past and letting the gift of that offer a place of like new healing in your current relationships. It's just never too late.
For sure. Well, thankful for Mo and Tona. And if you listen today wondering what they're like in person, can I trust these stories they're telling? Like, is this just kind of dramatized? I would just encourage you and tell you that the stories you've heard today have come as a result of real work done by Mo and Tona. And I've seen it up close, our community has here, but I would also just say that this work in general in parenting, learning your attachment patterns and style, learning that of your kids, it is a game changer. It is difficult to parent in light of that. It is difficult to work on the things that these discoveries cause you to work on, but so valuable, so worth it. So for everyone at ETC, for Kyle Wright, who edits and engineers all of our audio, for Tad Jewett, the creator of the music behind the ETC podcast, I'm JD Wilson, and we will see you next week on the Empowered to Connect podcast.